All right, good morning, everyone. We are here with break 457. It is a 26 League Heroes retail combo break featuring the 26 League Heroes case, the 26 League Heroes starter case, as well as the bonuses, which is the 26 League Heroes hobby box and the 26 sticker album and box combo. The bonuses will get randomised as one lot at the end of the break between all 17 teams, with the winner having the bonuses sent out with their break cards. The team list for this one: Broncos, Jason Biegemann; Raiders, Spencer Jones; Bulldogs, Murray Earl; Sharks, Dylan Smith; Dolphins, Troy Dugdell; Titans, Johnathon Bowden; Manly and Storm, Peter Lowe; Knights, Johnathon Bowden; Cowboys, Terry Payne; Eels, Ryan Nuttall; Panthers, Scott McBride; Rabbitohs, Talia Mayer; Dragons, Warren Stoddart; Roosters, Dean Mick; Warriors, Peter Lowe; and Tigers, Jared Lowe. Jared and Talia, I'm pretty sure you guys aren't in the Facebook group. Please remember to answer all the questions and agree to the rules for the group. Otherwise, the Facebook admin AI will automatically decline your request. So yeah, with all the giveaways, guys, we gave away $150 in our last week's Pick the Score giveaway. There's a $270 gift card if you get your entries in quick, if you haven't already, and that is for 2,700 member milestone giveaway as well. And these are only in the Facebook group. And the tipping comp, make sure you get your tips in, as State of Origin Game 1 on Wednesday is included in this round. All right. Let's get into it. We have our bonuses here ready to go. We'll put them to the back. Yes, we have started a few minutes early, but I figured by the time we get the starter packs out, everyone will be watching and ready to go. Let me bring up the YouTube chat. Sorry, I just noticed a new message from Jared Lowe. If you're watching, mate, I will reply to you and we'll get it fixed up. Give me a second. No. I'll reply to you and get that fixed up after the break. Unfortunately, you won't make it into the giveaway. If you want to put in, if you are watching and you want to put in a quick request, I can manually do that. Yeah, put in a, if you do it quickly, if you put in a quick request, I'll approve it so you can get in the giveaway today. Because by the time we finish, it will be too late. The entry will be cut off. So if you put in a request, you won't be able to answer the questions. I'll start getting these out while you do that. I'm assuming that's probably that now. There you go. Quickly refresh that, and that should be there. There you go. That's approved, mate. If you can, once you're in there having a look at the group, you should be able to find a part where you can answer the questions and agree to the rules. please make sure you go and do that. That way we know that you've read them and you understand what they are. Alright, let's go. No worries, mate. I didn't want you to miss out because I'd seen that you tried to join a few times. But when I went to tag you, I couldn't tag you, so I knew you weren't in there. I was actually surprised I was able to message you on Facebook. It doesn't normally let me message someone if they haven't messaged us first. I've normally got to go switch to my profile and send them a message that way. Alright, that's our first 10. Let's, no, that's our first, oh yeah, 10. I can't count. Let's do these ones so we don't have a big pile of the bonuses sitting there. Extra careful with these today. I learnt my lesson last break. Don't you worry. First up, Brisbane best for the Knights. That's what I'm missing because I was flicking through Windows. Johnathon Bowden. For the Rabbitohs, Keon Kolomatangi. Upside Coruscant for the Tigers. Stephen Crichton for the Bulldogs. And Brisbane best for the Knights again. So if anyone's looking for a Brisbane best, Jonathan Bowden now has a spare. And Richard, we don't have any hobby boxes available, but we have the standard 26 League Heroes as far as I'm aware. Actually, before I say that, I'm not sure where we're at. I'm just having a quick look at the website so I make sure I don't tell any fibs. Yes, we have one case in stock, which is 12 boxes, and we have the standard boxes available as well. We also have the factory sealed box starter pack and album combo. trying not to get distracted here. League heads, Reuben Garrick for Manly. Reuben Garrick for Manly. Go best to have a look on the website, mate. Look, I'll even do you one better, so that way you can see all the options. And that's only because I had the thing open. There you go. There's the link straight to them. League heads, Jaden Sewer for the Dragons. Something completely different that's a little bit exciting for us. Mum is currently in the process of listing the 25 Elite Master Series team sets. Nico Hines for the Sharks. And Jerome Hughes for Storm. Nope, let's keep getting these bonus cards out. No problem. Our new weekly pick the score for round 13 is up. I did that this morning. And last week's tipping comp, we have put the post up. I haven't randomised the winners to find out who will actually score the gift card. We're not sure who one of the winners are, so it's a bit hard to ask everyone to share it. NRL.com's tipping page has sort of done me a bit of a dirty this year, as I can't see the surnames. So unless the team name is a giveaway to who it actually is, then half the time I don't know. Alright, there's our next 10. Ethan Strange for the Raiders. Junior Paulo for the Eels. Murray Talagi for the Cowboys. Latrell Mitchell for the Rabbitohs. Braden Trindle for the Sharks. Stefano Utoikamanu for Storm. Dream Buller for the Tigers. Robert Toya for the Roosters. Bailey Haywood for the Bulldogs. Luke Metcalf for the Warriors. That's now halfway through. Thought it was a piece of cardboard sitting there, but it was a moth. Alright, that's our next 10 ready to go. 5, once a quarter fish alive. League heads, Phoenix Crossland for the Knights. Yeah, I was so lucky last week. Stephen Murray was awesome about what happened. Liam Martin for Panthers. And we were able to sort something out straight away. Luke Brooks for Manly, which was even better for me. Ezra Mam for the Broncos. Kyle Flanagan for the Dragons. Come on, Dolphins and Titans. Last to hit. They've still got 15 more to go. So plenty still to go around. I'm not going to lie. I've noticed I've been saying that a lot lately. I'm sitting here wondering if we're going to hit another Bradman Best and Ruben Garrick to make it 3 or one of them. Cody Nikorima for the Dolphins. There we go. Hudson Young for the Raiders. Brian Kelly for the Titans. Scott Drinkwater for the Cowboys. Spencer Lenu for the Roosters. Alright, that's our last 10. Let's get through these. I think this is one of the best improvements that Select has done or does over TLA, as far as we've been calling for something like this for the starter packs for a long time. I remember when I was in Sydney before I come up here and start working with my parents, I walked into a newsagent's and I was just learning the whole hobby, as in what everything was. And yeah, I remember seeing a guy going through the starter packs and tapping them to the side so he could see what was in what before he purchased them from the newsagents. And you'd have to assume for the newsagents to let them do that, they had no idea what they were actually doing. Latrell Mitchell, league heads for the Rabbitohs. Stefano Utakamanu for Storm. Dream Buller for the Tigers. Seeing lots of doubles in this case. Robert Toya for the Roosters. Bailey Hayward for the Bulldogs. Alright, here's our last 5. I would say we've got at least 5 doubles so far. Phoenix Crossland for the Knights. Look at Metcalf for the Warriors. Pretty sure they're both more double ups. Liam Martin for the Panthers. Yep. Luke Brooks for Manly. I'm sort of disappointed it wasn't the Ruben Garrick. Oh. Ezra Mam for the Broncos. Alright, well, that was interesting. Let's get rid of them and get into these packs. Big Tino for the Titans. That was an interesting starter case, Dad. I think half of them were double ups.
Oh, I've had that. I had 2 different ones and 9 double ups.
Yeah.
Or whatever it was.
Yeah, I know, but I'd be close to at least 10 of the...
Same as the gold bangs, I did one of the things. I got the same double ups in that as well.
There you go. Luke Lord-Lily, Luminous for the Tigers. To be fair, if it was only 1 or 2, I wouldn't have probably commented so much, except for the Bradman Best and the Garrick, because they come out so quickly together. But yeah, after getting through the whole thing and having that many, that was odd. Gahamat Shabarski for the Broncos. Well, clearly it's not odd, because it's regular. Murray Talagi for the Cowboys. Mercury, Jerome Hughes for Storm, number 186. Luminous, Brian To'o for Panthers. Bang, Clinton Gutherson for Dragons. Luminous, Moses Sulai for the Dragons. Game Breakers, Luke Brooks for Manly. Luminous, Dane Gagai for the Knights. League Heads, Jermaine Isako for Dolphins. Luminous, Connor Watson for Roosters. League Heads, Falago for Storm. Luminous, Patrick Carrigan for the Broncos. Game Breakers, Dylan Edwards for Panthers. Luminous, Stephen Crichton for the Bulldogs. Die Cuts, Samula Fainu for Tigers. Luminous, Philip Semi for the Titans. Bang, Dream Buller for Tigers. Luminous, Ray Stone for Dolphins. League Heads, Alex Johnston for the Rabbitohs. Luminous, Emma Veron for the Sharks. Die Cut, Mitch Kenny for Panthers. Luminous, Samula Fainu for Tigers. Bang, Roger Tuivasa Sheck for the Warriors. Upside down, a Luminous, Tamale for the Raiders. League Heads, Joash for the Eels. Luminous, Loco Tonga for the Dragons. Game Breakers, Luca Moretti for the Eels. Luminous, Luke Brooks for Manly. Game Breakers, Julia Robinson for the Broncos. Luminous, Dylan Walker for the Eels. League Heads, Tommy Dearden for the Cowboys. Luminous, Zahara Tamara for the Raiders. Falago for Storm. Luminous, Zach Labutt for the Cowboys. League heads, Greg Marsu for the Knights. Luminous, Renato Militalo for Sharks. Red Triumph, Dylan Walker for the Eels. Luminous, Jacob Saifiti for the Knights. Game Breakers, Saitili Tupanua for the Bulldogs. Luminous, Harry Grant for Storm. League heads, Samula Fainu for the Tigers. Luminous, Xavier Savage for the Raiders. Game Breakers, Alex Twile for the Tigers. Luminous, Georgia Hale for the Titans. Die cut, Ruben Garrick for Manly. Luminous, Isaiah Katoa for the Dolphins. Red Triumph, one of my favourites. Dylan Edwards for Panthers. One of the better pictures in those, I think. I think it's definitely him and Walsh. Yeah, Ruben Garrick for Manly. Wish I could say it was an Eels card, but no. League heads, Marky Mark for Roosters. Luminous, Mitch Kenny for Panthers. Bang, Blaze Talagi for Panthers. Luminous, Josh Kerr for Dragons. League heads, Lehe Hopawate for Manly. Luminous, Bailey Haywood for the Bulldogs. Bang, Zach Labert for Cowboys. Luminous, Tyson Frizzell for Knights. Game Breakers, Trent LaRoe for Storm. Luminous, Adam Fanua Blake for Sharks. League heads, Nelson Asafa Solomona for Storm. Luminous, Angus Crichton for the Roosters. Die cut, Max King for Bulldogs. Luminous, Jaden Campbell for the Titans. Bang, Jack Whiten for the Rabbitohs. Luminous, Phoenix Crossland for the Knights. League heads, Corey Horsburgh for the Raiders. Luminous, Payne Huss for the Broncos. Game breakers, John Bateman for the Cowboys. Sebastian Chris Luminous for Raiders. Game breakers, Tegan Dimick for the Bulldogs. Luminous, Dylan Edwards for Panthers. Game breakers, Max Plath for Dolphins. Luminous, Cassie Hiku for the Eels. Red Triumph, Kalen Ponga for the Knights. Luminous, Marky Mark for Roosters. Die Cut, Lehe Hopawate for Manly. Luminous, Corey Horsburgh for the Raiders. Game breakers, Chance Nico Clockstad for the Warriors. Luminous, Campbell Graham for the Rabbitohs. Mercury, Lachlan and Galvin for the Bulldogs, number 32. Luminous, Ruben Cotter for the Cowboys. Die Cuts, Jack Hetherington for the Knights. Luminous, Kurt Capewell for the Warriors. Dylan Edwards, Game Breakers for Panthers. Luminous, Xavier Coates for Storm. Bang, Brian To'o for Panthers. Luminous, Herbie Farmworth for the Dolphins. League heads, Patrick Carrigan for the Broncos. Luminous, Dream Buller for the Tigers. Bang, Roger Tuivasa Sheck for the Warriors. Luminous, Ethan Bullymore for Manly. League heads, Blake Brayley for the Sharks. Luminous, Jesse Colquhoun for the Sharks. Game breakers, Jaden Sewer for the Dragons. Luminous, Taylor Preston for the Bulldogs. Bang, Cody Nikarima for the Dolphins. Luminous, Wade Egan for the Warriors. League heads Max King for the Bulldogs. Luminous Latu Finu for Tigers. League heads Jeremiah Nanai for the Cowboys. Luminous Tom Gilbert for the Dolphins. Die cut Joash for the Eels. Luminous Abby Church for the Eels. Game breakers Luke Brooks for Manly. Luminous Spencer Lenu for the Roosters. League heads Dominic Young for the Knights. Luminous Dylan Egan for the Dragons. League heads Murray Talagi for Cowboys. Luminous Dylan Brown for the Knights. Red Triumph Katoni Staggs for the Broncos. Luminous Clinton Gutherson for the Dragons. Bang Connor Tracy for the Bulldogs. Luminous Isaiah Yo for Panthers. Game breakers Julia Robinson for the Broncos. Luminous Asaya Iongi for the Eels. League heads Moses Sulai for the Dragons. Luminous Jack Whiten for the Rabbitohs. Wrong side. Alright, pack number 60. So we're halfway through the packets out of the starter packs. Leka Halasima for the Warriors. And Luminous Ben Hunt for the Broncos. Let's move this first lot of base cards out of our way. Die cuts Dominic Young for the Knights. Luminous Renato Mulatalo for the Sharks. Game breakers Jai Gray for the Rabbitohs. Luminous Jessica Surgis for the Roosters. Bang Jaden Sewer for the Dragons. Luminous Mitchell Moses for the Eels. League heads Terrell May for the Tigers. Luminous Jordan Ricky for the Broncos. Die cut Mitchell Moses for the Eels. Luminous Sam Walker for the Roosters. League heads Robert Toya for the Roosters. Luminous John Bateman for the Cowboys. Game breakers Patrick Malapo for the Warriors. Patricia, sorry, my bad. Josh Kerr, Luminous for the Dragons. As soon as I started saying the surname, I knew I got it wrong. Origin Predictor for the table. Cameron Munster for the Storm. Bang, Ryan Pappenhausen for Storm. Brian Kelly, Luminous for Titans. Need to quiet mute. Game breakers Corey Horsburgh for the Raiders. Luminous Jamin Salmon for the Bulldogs. Gladiators Xavier Coates for Storm, number 438. Luminous Keon Kolomatangi for the Rabbitohs. Game breakers Asaya Yongi for the Eels. Luminous Ali Latua for the Warriors. League heads KO Weeks for the Raiders. Luminous Alex Seafarth for the Tigers. Bang, Kalen Ponga for the Knights. Luminous Xavier Savage for the Raiders. League heads Jason Saab for Manly. Luminous Georgia Hale for Titans. Game breakers Jalen DeGroot for Titans. Luminous Asai Katoa for Dolphins. Game breakers Matt Burton for the Bulldogs. Luminous Jacob Saifiti for the Knights. League heads Cameron Murray for the Rabbitohs. Luminous Harry Grant for Storm. Mercury, Dylan Edwards for Panthers, number 213. Wrong player. Loco Tonga for the Dragons. League heads, Cameron Munster for the Storm. Luminous, Luke Brooks for Manly. Red Triumph, Jermaine Isako for Dolphins. Luminous, Zach Labert for Cowboys. League heads, Jacob Little for the Dragons. Luminous, Mitch Kenny for the Panthers. Die cuts, Xavier Savage for the Raiders. Luminous, Adam Fanua Blake for Sharks. Game breakers, Terrell May for the Tigers. Luminous, Ruben Garrick for Manly. Bang, Chance Nicole Klokstad for the Warriors. Luminous, Tyson Frizzell for the Knights. League heads, Joseph Tarpanay for the Raiders. Luminous, Jalen DeGroot for Titans. League heads, Alafiana Campiera for Titans. Luminous, Bailey Haywood for the Bulldogs. Game breakers, Gahamat Shabarsky for the Broncos. Luminous, Asaya Papalihi for Panthers. Bang, Daniel Tupou for the Roosters. Luminous, Jacob Carraz for the Bulldogs. League heads, Brian To'o for Panthers. Luminous, Katoni Staggs for the Broncos. Game breakers, Saitili Tupanua for the Bulldogs. And I went to put it in the Warriors. Luminous, Jaden Sewer for the Dragons. League heads, Payne Haas for the Broncos. Luminous, Mackenzie Wheel for the Cowboys. Red Triumph, Homoli Olika R2 for Manly. Dylan Lucas, Luminous for the Knights. Game breakers, Nafor White for the Roosters. Luminous Zahara Temera for the Raiders. Gladiators, Phoenix Crossland for the Knights, number 183. Luminous Dylan Walker for the Eels. Die cuts, Luke Lolili for Tigers. Luminous Connor Watson for the Roosters. Game breakers, Harry Grant for the Storm. Luminous Dane Gagai for the Knights. League heads, Angus Crichton for the Roosters. Luminous Moses Sulai for the Dragons. League heads, Lachlan Galvin for the Bulldogs. Luminous Philip Semi for the Titans. Very loud. Die cuts, Marky Mark for the Roosters. Luminous Stephen Crichton for the Bulldogs. Bang, Jerome Hughes for Storm. Luminous Patrick Carrigan for the Broncos. Game breakers, Jamie Chapman for the Titans. Luminous Samula Fainu for the Tigers. Bang, Stephen Crichton for the Bulldogs. Luminous Emma Veron for the Sharks. League heads, Ethan Bullymore for Manly. Luminous Ray Stone for the Dolphins. League heads, Wade Egan for the Warriors. Luminous Brendan Smith for the Rabbitohs. Bang, Jackson Purdue for the Cowboys. Luminous Falago for Storm. Red Triumph, Alex Johnston for the Rabbitohs. Luminous Tamale for the Raiders. Die cut, Morgan Smithies for the Raiders. Luminous Brian To'o for Panthers. Die cut, Val Holmes for the Dragons. Luminous Adam Reynolds for the Broncos. League heads, Gutherson for Dragons. Luminous, Lachlan Galvin for the Bulldogs. Game breakers, Xavier Savage for the Raiders. Luminous, Hugo Savala for Roosters. League heads, Bradman Best for Knights. Luminous, Moses Leota for Panthers. Bang Campbell Graham for the Rabbitohs. Luminous, Marata Nakor for the Warriors. 1, 2, 3, 7 packs to go out of the starter packs. Game breakers, Luca Moretti for the Eels. Luminous, Jermaine Hopgood for the Eels. Game breakers, Sophie Holloman for Raiders. Luminous, Luciano Leilua for Dragons. Die cuts, Connor Watson for the Roosters. Katoni Staggs, Luminous for Broncos. League heads, Luke Brooks for Manly. Luminous, Jesse Southwell for the Knights. League heads, AJ Brimson for the Titans. Luminous, Brian Kelly for Titans. Game breakers, Tommy Turbo for Manly. Luminous, Bailey Simonson for the Eels. And lucky last. Bang, Ali Latua for the Warriors. And Cameron Munster, Luminous for Storm. Alright guys, well that's all 120 packets out of the starter packs. Let's move these out of the way and we'll get that retail case open. That's our 12 boxes out, ready to go. Let's get set in. We had one Origin predictor and a couple of Gladiators and a couple of Mercuries. Yes. No golden. What a treasure. Keep going to say ticket. Bang Kalen Ponga for the Knights. Luminous Luke Brooks for Manly. Gladiators Leka Halasima for the Warriors, number 240. Luminous Sayakatoa for Dolphins. Game Breakers Dylan Lucas for the Knights. Luminous Xavier Savage for the Raiders. Mercury Big Tino for the Titans, number 180. Luminous Georgia Hale for the Titans. Bang Ryan Pappenhausen for Storm. Luminous Josh Kerr for the Dragons. League Heads Chanel Harris Tavita for the Warriors. Luminous Ruben Garrick for Manly. League Heads Latrell Mitchell for the Rabbitohs. Luminous Asaya Papaliki for Panthers. Bang Daniel Tupou for the Roosters. Luminous Jacob Carraz for Bulldogs. Game Breakers Jackson Purdue for the Cowboys. Luminous Alex Seafarth for Tigers. League Heads Hammer for the Dolphins. Luminous Keon Kolomatangi for the Rabbitohs. Die Cuts Griffin Neem for the Cowboys. Luminous Ali Latua for the Warriors. League Heads Liam Martin for Panthers. Luminous Jordan Ricky for the Broncos. Red Triumph Hamoli Olika R2 for Manly. Luminous Jessica Surgis for Roosters. League Heads Cameron McInnes for the Sharks. Luminous Mitchell Moses for the Eels. Game Breakers Nita Maynard for the Dragons. Luminous Harry Grant for Storm. Bang Jaden Sewer for the Dragons. Luminous Renato Molitalo for Sharks. League Heads Jerome Hughes for Storm. Luminous Jacob Saifiti for the Knights. Die Cuts Keanu Kinney for the Titans. Luminous Zach Labour for the Cowboys. League Heads Kalen Ponga for the Knights. Luminous Loco Tonga for the Dragons. Game Breakers Tolator Kuwala for Manly. Luminous Cassie Hiku for the Eels. Cheers. Red Triumph Angus Crichton for the Roosters. Luminous Marky Mark for the Roosters. League Heads Valami Kickout for the Bulldogs. Tommy Gilbert Luminous for Dolphins. Game Breakers Tui Kamika for Storm. Luminous Wade Egan for the Warriors. Die Cuts Blaze Talagi for Panthers. Luminous Latu Finu for the Tigers. League Heads Junior Paulo for the Eels. Luminous Ezra Mam for the Broncos. Game Breakers Xavier Willison for the Broncos. Tommy Dearden for the Cowboys. Bang Cody Nikarima for the Dolphins. Jai Arrow Luminous for the Rabbitohs. League Heads Hamoli Olika R2 for Manly. Luminous Keanu Kinney for the Titans. Dally M Predictor. Luminous Kyle Flanagan for the Dragons. Game Breakers Anessa Biddle for the Sharks. Luminous Angelina for the Bulldogs. Game breakers, Isaac Tago for Panthers. Luminous, Mitch Kenny for Panthers. League heads, Adam Reynolds for the Broncos. Luminous, Adam Finilla Blake for the Sharks. Die cuts, Katoni Staggs for the Broncos. Bailey Haywood, Luminous for the Bulldogs. Game breakers, Robert Toya for the Roosters. Luminous, Tyson Frizzell for the Knights. League heads, Jerome Lowe for the Tigers. Luminous, Jalen de Groot for Titans. And lucky last pack for box number 1. Bang Chance, Nicole Klockstad for the Warriors. And Corey Horsburgh, Raiders Luminous. That's the end of box number 1. Let's tidy up the base cards and get in box number 2. Here we go. League heads, Patrick Carrigan for the Broncos. Luminous, Katoni Staggs for the Broncos. Red Triumph, Mawaki Fodawaika for the Titans. Luminous, Saya Papali'i for Panthers. Game breakers, Billy Smith for Roosters. Luminous, Jacob Carraz for the Bulldogs. League heads, Mitchell Barnett for the Warriors. Alex Seafarth, Luminous for Tigers. Die cuts, Isaac Tago for Panthers. Luminous, Keon Kolomatangi for Rabbitohs. League heads, Luke Brooks for Manly. Luminous, Zach Labutt for Cowboys. Mercury, Zach Lomax for the Eels, number 354. Luminous, Loco Tonga for the Dragons. it open. Game breakers, Payne Huss for the Broncos. Luminous, Connolly, Lowe for the Dolphins. Gladiators, Patrick Carrigan for the Broncos, number 287. Luminous, Samuel Stonestreet for the Sharks. League heads, Corey Horsburgh for the Raiders. Luminous, Tanila Paseka for Manly. Bang, Val Holmes for the Dragons. Sam Walker, Luminous for Roosters. Game breakers, Cameron Munster for Storm. Luminous, John Bateman for Cowboys. Die cut, Cameron Murray for the Rabbitohs. Luminous, Jamin Salmon for the Bulldogs. League heads, John Bateman for the Cowboys. Luminous, Cameron Munster for Storm. Game breakers, Ruben Cotter for the Cowboys. Luminous, Brian Kelly for Titans. League heads, Nathan Cleary for Panthers. Luminous, Bailey Simonson for the Eels. Game breakers, James Fisher-Harris for the Warriors. Jesse Southwell, Luminous for Knights. Bang, James Tedesco for the Roosters. Die cuts, Luciano Leilua for the Dragons. Game breakers, Kurt Mann for the Bulldogs. Luminous, Luke Brooks for Manly. League heads, Connor Tracy for the Bulldogs. Luminous, Asai Katoa for the Dolphins. Bang, Alex Johnston for the Rabbitohs. Luminous, Xavier Savage for the Raiders. League heads, Sam Verrills for Titans. Luminous, Georgia Hale for the Titans. Die cuts, Trent LaRoe for Storm. Luminous, Josh Kerr for the Dragons. Game breakers, William Kennedy for the Sharks. Luminous, Ruben Garrick for Manly. Red Triumph for the Team Warriors. Luminous, Mitch Kenny. Luminous for the Panthers. League heads, Dominic Young for the Knights. Luminous, Adenfanua Blake for the Sharks. Bang, Lachlan Galvin for the Bulldogs. Luminous, Bailey Haywood for the Bulldogs. League heads, Stefano Utakamanu for Storm. Luminous, Tyson Frizzell for the Knights. Instant win. Jalen De Groot, Luminous for Titans. Bang, Jalen De Groot for Titans. Luminous, Ali Latua for the Warriors. League heads, Dream Buller for the Tigers. Luminous, Jordan Ricky for the Broncos. Game breakers, Herbie Farnworth for the Dolphins. Luminous, Jessica Surgis for the Roosters. League heads, Herbie Farnworth for the Dolphins. Mitchell Moses, Luminous for the Eels. Die cuts, Terrell May for the Tigers. Luminous, Harry Grant for Storm. Game breakers, Olivia Higgins for Knights. Luminous, Renato Molitalo for the Sharks. Alright, lucky last for box number 2 out of the case. Bang, Cronulla Pole for the Tigers. And Luminous Jacob Saifiti for the Knights. Let's move these on out of our way. And getting to box number 3. Could have put them in that box, but that's alright. League heads, William Kennedy for the Sharks. Luminous, Tegan Berry for the Dragons. Game breakers, Tom Gilbert for the Dolphins. Luminous, Nafor White for the Roosters. Cheers. Bang, Jason Saab for Manly. Luminous, Jack Bostock for the Dolphins. Red Triumph for the Eels. Couple of edge tags, I guess you could call them. Lindsay Smith, Luminous for Panthers. League heads, Scott Drinkwater for the Cowboys. Luminous, Fletcher Sharp for the Knights. Game breakers, Julia Robinson for the Broncos. Luminous, Xavier Willison for the Broncos. Die cut, Max Plath for Dolphins. Luminous, Dylan Walker for the Eels. Bang, Cody Walker for the Rabbitohs. Luminous, Tamara for the Raiders. Tamara. League heads, Apisai Korosia for Tigers. Luminous, Brian Tar for Panthers. Game breakers, Dane Gagai for the Knights. Luminous, Luke Loyley for Tigers. League heads, Lehe Hopawate for Manly. Luminous, Murray Talagi for Cowboys. Die cut, Triumph, Connor Tracy for the Bulldogs. Luminous, Chanel Harris-Tavita for the Warriors. Bang, Alefiana Campiera for Titans. Luminous, Blake Brayley for the Sharks. League heads, Joash for the Eels. Luminous, Tui Kamika for Storm. Game breakers, Tamale for the Raiders. Luminous, Jake Trbojevic for Manly. Die cuts, Marata Nakor for the Warriors. Luminous, Sean Kepi for the Rabbitohs. League heads, Alex Johnston for the Rabbitohs. Luminous, Tommy Turbo for Manly. Bang, Jacob Carraz for the Bulldogs. Luminous, Latrell Mitchell for the Rabbitohs. League heads, Dylan Lucas for the Knights. Luminous, Connor Tracy for the Bulldogs. Game breakers, Luke Brooks for Manly. Luminous, Roger Tuvasashek for Warriors. Die cuts, Sanua Taruva for Tigers. Luminous, Tiana Penatani Gray for the Sharks. League heads, Jermaine Isako for Dolphins. Luminous, Terrell May for the Tigers. Gladiators, Tom Starling for the Raiders, number 222. Tyron Wishart, Luminous for the Storm. League heads, Connor Tracy for the Bulldogs. Luminous, Kira Dibb for Cowboys. Game breakers, Jaden Sewer for the Dragons. Luminous, Braden Trindle for the Sharks. Bang, Greg Marzhew for the Knights. Luminous, Sam Verrills for the Titans. League heads, Ben Hunt for the Broncos. Luminous, Bradman Best for the Knights. Mercury Lekahelasima for the Warriors. Luminous Junior Paulo for the Eels. Game Breakers John Bateman for the Cowboys. Luminous Felice Kafusi for Dolphins. Die Cuts Sean Russell for the Eels. Luminous Ethan Strange for the Raiders. Game Breakers Dylan Edwards for Panthers. Luminous Jack Williams for Eels. Alright, 5 packets left out of box number 3. Premiership Predictor. Stefano Uzikamanu, Luminous for Storm. League Heads, Big Tino for Titans. Luminous KO Weeks for the Raiders. 3 packets are left for box number 3. Bang Jackson Purdue for Cowboys. Luminous Bo Fermor for Titans. Oh, stop doing that. Game Breakers Chance Nicole Clockstad for the Warriors. Luminous Jason Tormalolo for Cowboys. League Heads Clinton Gutherson for the Dragons and Luminous Alex Twal for the Tigers to finish off the box. Let's pack these away. Another sip of coffee. Game Breakers Isaiah Katoa for Dolphins. Luminous Dane Gagai for the Knights. Excuse me. Gladiators Lindsay Collins for the Roosters. Number 587. Luminous Connor Watson for the Roosters. League heads, Ray Stone for the Dolphins. Luminous, Moses Sulai for the Dragons. Die cuts, Jeremy Marshall King for the Dolphins. Luminous, Dylan Walker for the Eels. Bang, Episode Coruscant for the Tigers. Luminous, Tamara for the Raiders. Tamara. League heads, Ryan Pappenhausen for Storm. Luminous, Brian Top for Panthers. Game breakers, James Tedesco for the Roosters. Luminous, Luke Lolly for the Tigers. Mercury, Corey Horsburgh for the Raiders, number 143. Luminous, Falago for Storm. Game breakers, Jerome Luai for Tigers. Brendan Smith, Luminous for the Rabbitohs. League heads, Tommy Turbo for Manly. Luminous, Savalio Tamale for the Raiders. Bang, Dylan Lucas for the Knights. Luminous, Emma Veron for the Sharks. Game breakers, Appy Nichols for the Warriors. Luminous, Samula Finu for the Tigers. League heads, Jaden Sewer for the Dragons. Luminous, Ray Stone for the Dolphins. Tanila Paseka, die cuts for Manly. Stephen Crichton, Luminous for the Bulldogs. Bang, Adam Reynolds for the Broncos. Luminous, Philip Semi for the Titans. League heads, Fletcher Sharp for the Knights. Patrick Carrigan, Luminous for the Broncos. Die Cuts, Jordan Ricky for the Broncos. Luminous, Murray Talagi for Cowboys. League Heads, Dylan Walker for the Eels. Luminous, Chanel Harris Tavita for the Warriors. Game Breakers, Joash for the Eels. Luminous, Blake Brayley for the Sharks. Bang Kale Iro for Sharks. Luminous, Tui Kamikamika for Storm. League Heads, Robert Toya for the Roosters. Luminous, Jake Trbojevic for Manly. Triumph, Morgan Smithies for the Raiders. Luminous, Sean Kepi for the Rabbitohs. Game Breakers, Morgan Smithies for the Raiders. Luminous, Tegan Berry for the Dragons. Die Cuts, Brian Kelly for Titans. Luminous, Tommy Turbo for Manly. League Heads, Marata Nakor for the Warriors. Latrell Mitchell, Luminous for the Rabbitohs. Game Breakers, Valami Kickout for the Bulldogs. Luminous, Connor Tracy for the Bulldogs. Bang, Dylan Edwards for Panthers. Luminous, Roger Tuivasa Sheck for the Warriors. League Heads, Fanua Pole for the Tigers. Luminous, Tiana Penatani Gray for the Sharks. Dally M Wild Predictor. Luminous, Terrell May for the Tigers. League Heads, Cody Walker for the Rabbitohs. Luminous, Jack Williams for the Eels. Red Triumph, Junior Paulo for the Eels. Luminous, Stefano Iskamanu for Storm. League heads, Reece Walsh for Broncos. Luminous white for the Roosters. Game breakers, Bo Fermor for Titans. Luminous Jack Bostock for Dolphins. Bang Jai Gray for the Rabbitohs. Luminous Lindsay Smith for Panthers. Game breakers, Tegan Berry for the Dragons. Luminous Fletcher Sharp for the Knights. And last packet for the box. League heads, Brighton Nickera for Sharks and Luminous Xavier Willison for Broncos. Alright, let's keep it going. League heads, Campbell Graham for the Rabbitohs. Luminous Apasai Coruscant for the Tigers. Die cut, Jacob Preston for the Bulldogs. Luminous Liam Martin for Panthers. Game breakers, Xavier Savage for the Raiders. Scott Drinkwater, Luminous for Cowboys. Red Triumph for the Sharks. Luminous Luca Moretti for the Eels. Mercury Samula Fainu for the Tigers, number 216. James Fisher-Harris, Luminous for the Warriors. League heads, Zach Lomax for the Eels. Luminous Yasmin Clydesdale for the Knights. League heads, Adam Dewey for the Tigers. Luminous Cohen Hess for the Cowboys. Game breakers, Alex Twile for the Tigers. Luminous Nico Hines for the Sharks. Bang Lycan Togia for the Dragons. Luminous Lehe Hopawate for Manly. League heads, Xavier Coates for Storm. Luminous Morgan Smithies for the Raiders. Gladiators, Bo Fermor for the Titans, number 27. Luminous Dean Mariner for the Broncos. Game Breakers, Luca Moretti for the Eels. Luminous Isabel Kelly for the Roosters. League Heads, Ethan Blimore for Manly. Luminous Nelson Sofa Solomona for Storm. Game Breakers, Saitili Tupanua for Bulldogs. Luminous Alex Johnston for the Rabbitohs. Bang, Robert Toya for the Roosters. Luminous Valami Kickout for the Bulldogs. Game Changes, Jamie Chapman for the Titans. Luminous Val Holmes for the Dragons. Bang, Brian Kelly for Titans. Luminous Big Tino for Titans. League Heads, Phoenix Crossland for the Knights. Luminous Kale Iro for the Sharks. Game Breakers, Harry Grant for Storm. Luminous Cody Nikarima for Dolphins. Die Cuts, Luciano Lay Lua for Dragons. Luminous Jason Saab for Manly. League Heads, and Fanua Blake for the Sharks. Luminous Ryan Pappenhausen for Storm. Die Cuts, Chance Nicole Klokstad for the Warriors. Luminous Brighton Nickera for the Sharks. League Heads, Lachlan Galvin for the Bulldogs. Kalen Ponga, Luminous for the Knights. Bang, Latrell Mitchell for the Rabbitohs. Luminous Lycan King Togia for Dragons. League Heads, Regan Campbell Gillard for the Titans. Luminous Isaac Tago for Panthers. Die Cuts, Zach Labert for Cowboys. Luminous Alifiana Campiera for Titans. Game Breakers, Jareem Buller for the Tigers. Luminous Addo Carr for the Eels. Jermaine Isako, red triumphs for the Dolphins. Luminous Robert Toya for the Roosters. League heads Angus Crichton for the Roosters. Luminous Samaima Torfa for the Raiders. Bailey Haywood, bang for the Bulldogs. Luminous Tamir Martin for the Warriors. League heads Kyle Flanagan for Dragons. Luminous Giant Grey for the Rabbitohs. Game Breakers White for the Roosters. Luminous Gehamat Shabarsky for the Broncos. Golden Triumph. Luminous Jacob Preston for the Bulldogs. Bang Jerome Lowe for Tigers. Luminous Jeremiah Nanai for the Cowboys. Game Breakers Adam Reynolds for the Broncos. Luminous Keezy Apps for the Tigers. And lucky last for box number 5. League heads Tom Gilbert for the Dolphins. Luminous Cody Walker for the Rabbitohs. Get these tidied up. Alright, box number 6. We haven't gone too bad in the bigger hits, guys. We've hit 5 from 5 so far. So, I mean, we can look at that in one of two ways. We've had a really good start, or we're going to have a really bad finish. Alright, here we go. Next box. League heads Blake Brayley for the Sharks. Luminous James Tedesco for the Roosters. Red Triumph Kalen Ponga for the Knights. Luminous Max Plath for the Dolphins. League heads Nelson Asafa Solomona for Storm. Luminous Cameron Murray for the Rabbitohs. Bang Jermaine Isako for Dolphins. Luminous Jonah Pezzett for Storm. League heads Damien Cook for Dragons. Luminous Matthew Tomoko for Raiders. Mercury Moses Leotta for Panthers, number 186. Luminous Luke Metcalf for the Warriors. Red Triumph for the Raiders. Luminous Saratoga Tukey for Tigers. Excuse me. Game Breakers. Alex Johnston for the Rabbitohs. Luminous Regan Campbell Gillard for the Titans. Die cut Jason Saab for Manly. Jackson Purdue for Cowboys. League heads Stephen Crichton for the Bulldogs. Luminous Blaze Talagi for Panthers. Bang Ali Latua for the Warriors. Luminous Tom Starling for the Raiders. Game Breakers Ruben Garrick for Manly. Luminous Tamika Upton for the Broncos. League heads AJ Brimson for the Titans. Luminous Jesse Ramian for the Sharks. Bang Mitchell Moses for the Eels. Luminous Mitchell Barnett for the Warriors. Die cut Alifiana Khan Piera for Titans. Luminous Ben Trebojevic for Manly. League heads Lindsay Collins for the Roosters. Luminous Sanua Taruva for Tigers. Game Breakers Emily Bass for the Tigers. Will Penasini for the Eels. I think I almost said 3 different teams for Emily Bass there. Got Cowboys and Tigers out. I don't know what the third one, the middle one is going to be. Bang Cameron Munster for Storm. Luminous Jermaine McEwen for Knights. League heads Jai Arrow for the Rabbitohs. Luminous Jerome Hughes for Storm. Die cut, Gehamat Shabarski for the Broncos. Luminous, Casey McLean for Panthers. Bang, Tamale for the Raiders. Luminous, Chance Nico Klokstad for the Warriors. Game Breakers, Jesse Colquhoun for the Sharks. Luminous, Ethan Sanders for the Raiders. League Heads, Jermaine Hopgood for the Eels. Luminous, William Kennedy for the Sharks. Gladiators, Joash for the Eels, number 148. And Mr. Reed Marnie for the Cowboys. League Heads, Sebastian Chris for the Raiders. Damien Cook, Luminous for the Dragons. Game Breakers, Caitlin Ponga for the Knights. Luminous, Adam Dewey for the Tigers. League Heads, Ruben Cotter for the Cowboys. Luminous, Dominic Young for the Knights. Game Breakers, Gutho for the Dragons. Luminous, Molly Olika-Atu for Manly. Brighton Nickera for the Sharks. Luminous, Lindsay Collins for the Roosters. Game Breakers, Kira Dib for Cowboys. Luminous, Mawaki Fodawaika for the Titans. League Heads, Dylan Edwards for Panthers. Luminous, Ali Brigginshaw for the Broncos. Bang, Lehe Hopawate for Manly. Luminous, Jermaine Isako for Dolphins. Alright, 4 packets left for the box. Game Breakers, Nathan Cleary for Panthers. Luminous, Saitili Tupanua for the Bulldogs. Die cut, Cody Nikarima for the Dolphins. Luminous, Sean Russell for the Eels. League Heads, Bradman Best for the Knights. Luminous, Zali Hopkins for the Dragons. Last packet for the box. Game Breakers. Kurt Capewell for the Warriors. Luminous Kurt Mann for the Bulldogs. Alright, on that note, guys, I'm going to quickly take a toilet break. So I will be right back once I clean these up out of our way, ready to go when we get back. Alright, give me a couple of minutes while I duck off to the toilet. Alright, we are back. Let's go finish this off. League heads, Jack Williams for the Eels. Luminous Kuli Kefu for the Dolphins. Don't forget, we'll be drawing our 2,700 member giveaway from the Facebook group after the break, guys, where the lucky winner will score the $270 gift card for the website. Game Breakers, Jaden Campbell for Titans. Luminous Daniel Tupou for Roosters. League heads, Connor Watson for the Roosters. Luminous Happy Nichols for the Warriors. Bang Jerome Hughes for Storm. Luminous Carl Lawton for Cowboys. Red Triumph Stephen Crichton for Bulldogs. Luminous Dylan Lucas for Knights. League Heads Jack Whiten for the Rabbitohs, excuse me. Luminous Lachlan Galvin for the Bulldogs. Game Breakers Reece Walsh for Broncos. Luminous Adam Reynolds for the Broncos. Bang Casey McLean for Panthers. Luminous Hugo Savala for the Roosters. League Heads Xavier Willison for the Broncos. Luminous Fanua Pole for Tigers. Die Cuts Jermaine McEwen for Knights. Luminous Cameron McInnes for Sharks. Game Breakers Campbell Graham for the Rabbitohs. Luminous Trent LaRoe for Storm. Bang Zach Labert for the Cowboys. Luminous Jamal Fogarty for Manly. Dally M. League Heads Braden Trindle for the Sharks. Luminous AJ Brimson for the Titans. Die Cut Renato Molitalo for the Sharks. Luminous Marata Nakor for the Warriors. League Heads Roger Tuivasa Sheck for the Warriors. Luminous Moses Leota for Panthers. Bang William Kennedy for the Sharks. Luminous Jermaine Hopgood for the Eels. Game Breakers Jeremiah Nanai for the Cowboys. Luminous Mackenzie Wheel for the Cowboys. League Heads Murray Talagi for Cowboys. Luminous Jaden Sewer for the Dragons. Game Breakers Samima Torfa for the Raiders. Luminous Kyle Flanagan for Dragons. Oh, what's going on? Excellent connection, but it's loading. Alright, so output looks good. Refreshing the window. Still saying we're live. Excellent connection. Video is just spinning. Output is still good, no drop frames. Alright, looks like we're back. That should be fine. I don't know what happened there, if it actually dropped out, because everything looked like it was still working, except my video was just frozen and spinning. So hopefully nothing was actually wrong and it was just me. Die cut Marcelo Montoya for the Bulldogs. Luminous Corey Horsburgh for the Raiders. Red Triumph Murray Talagi for Cowboys. Luminous Cassie Hiku for the Eels. Die cut David Clemmer for the Dragons. Luminous Angelina for Bulldogs. Game Breakers Cameron Murray for the Rabbitohs. Luminous Marky Mark for Roosters. Bang Tolator Kuwala for Manly. Luminous Tom Gilbert for the Dolphins. League Heads Alex Twile for Tigers. Luminous Wade Egan for the Warriors. Game Breakers Blaze Talagi for Panthers. Luminous Latu Finu for Tigers. League Heads Moses Sulai for the Dragons. Luminous Ezra Mam for Broncos. Game Breakers Bailey Simonson for the Eels. Luminous Tommy Dearden for the Cowboys. Gladiators Tanila Paseka for Manly. Number 465. Luminous Jai Arrow for the Rabbitohs. I've seen a post getting around for Jai July. $1,000 for every try in July to MND research. That'd be pretty big. League Heads Hudson Young for the Raiders. Luminous Keanu Kinney for Titans. League Heads Hammer for the Dolphins. Luminous Zach Lomax for the Eels. Bang Ethan Strange for the Raiders. Luminous Nathan Cleary for Panthers. Game Breakers Dylan Egan for the Dragons. Luminous Jamie Humphries for the Rabbitohs. League Heads Isaiah Yeo for Panthers. Luminous Billy Walters for Broncos. Mercury John Bateman for the Cowboys, number 262. Joseph Tarpanay for the Raiders. Die cuts Luke Metcalf for the Warriors. Luminous Greg Marzhew for the Knights. And that's another box done and dusted. Bang Will Penasini for the Eels. Luminous Mackenzie Wheel for Cowboys. League Heads Keon Kolomatangi for the Rabbitohs. Luminous Jaden Sewer for the Dragons. Red Triumph for the Tigers. Luminous Dylan Lucas for the Knights. Upside down die cut Matthew Tomoko for the Raiders. Luminous Lachlan Galvin for the Bulldogs. Game Breakers Stephen Crichton for the Bulldogs. Luminous Adam Reynolds for the Broncos. Game Breakers Daniel Tupou for the Roosters. Luminous Patrick Carrigan for the Broncos. League Heads Bailey Haywood for the Bulldogs. Luminous Dane Gagai for the Knights. Die cuts Ben Trebojevic for Manly. Luminous Connor Watson for the Roosters. League heads, Ezra Mam for the Broncos. Luminous, Moses Sulai for the Dragons. League heads, Greg Marsu for the Knights. Luminous, Hugo Savala for the Roosters. Bang, Jesse Ramian for the Sharks. Luminous, Falago for Storm. Gladiators, Scott Drinkwater for the Cowboys, number 562. Luminous, Brendan Smith for the Rabbitohs. League heads, Isaiah Katoa for Dolphins. Luminous, Tamale for the Raiders. Game breakers, Big Tino for Titans. Luminous, Emma Veron for the Sharks. Bang, Terrell May for the Tigers. Luminous, Samula Fainu for Tigers. League heads, Milwaukee Fodawaika for Titans. Luminous, Ray Stone for Dolphins. Red Triumph, Katoni Staggs for Broncos. And Luminous, Stephen Crichton for the Bulldogs. League heads, Val Holmes for the Dragons. Luminous, Philip Sammy for the Titans. Die cut, Jesse Ramian for the Sharks. Luminous, Carl Lawton for the Cowboys. Game breakers, Ali Latua for the Warriors. Luminous, Fanua Pole for Tigers. Mercury, Gahamat Shabarsky for the Broncos, number 423. Luminous, Cameron McInnes for the Sharks. League heads, James Fisher-Harris for the Warriors. Luminous, Trent LaRoe for Storm. Game breakers, Fanua Pole for the Tigers. Luminous Zach Lomax for the Eels. League Heads Marky Mark for the Roosters. Luminous Nathan Cleary for Panthers. Game Breakers Zach Labert for the Cowboys. Luminous Jamie Humphries for the Rabbitohs. Bang Katoni Staggs for Broncos. Luminous Billy Walters for the Broncos. League Heads Tom Starling for the Raiders. Luminous Joseph Tarpanay for the Raiders. Cameron Munster die cut for Storm. Luminous Greg Marshew for the Knights. Game Breakers Angus Crichton for the Roosters. Luminous Cooley Kefu for the Dolphins. Bang Matthew Tomoko for the Raiders. Luminous Daniel Tupou for the Roosters. League Heads Moses Leota for Panthers. Luminous Appy Nichols for the Warriors. Game Breakers Luciano Leilua for the Dragons. Luminous Jamal Fogarty for Manly. Bang Blaze Talagi for Panthers. Luminous AJ Brimson for Titans. League Heads Harry Grant for Storm. Luminous Murata Nakor for the Warriors. Die cut Cody Walker for the Rabbitohs. Luminous Moses Leota for Panthers. Game Breakers Abby Church for the Eels. Luminous Jermaine Hopgood for the Eels. Alright, box done and dusted. Get rid of these and move on to the next one. Side. Game breakers, Lachlan Elias for the Dragons. Luminous, Mawaki Fodawaika for the Titans. Bang, Luke Brooks for Manly. Luminous, Ali Brigginshaw for Broncos. League heads, Liam Martin for Panthers. Luminous, Jermaine Isako for Dolphins. Die cuts, Carl Lawton for Cowboys. Luminous, Jerome Hughes for Storm. League heads, Cameron McInnes for Sharks. Luminous, Casey McLean for Panthers. Excuse me. Game breakers, Phoenix Crossland for the Knights. Luminous, Chance Nicole Cockstad for the Warriors. Game breakers, Taylor Preston for the Bulldogs. Luminous, Max Plath for Dolphins. League heads, Lucy Arno Lay Lua for the Dragons. Luminous, Cameron Murray for the Rabbitohs. Game breakers, Ryan Pappenhausen for the Storm. Luminous, Regan Campbell Gillard for the Titans. League heads, Latrell Mitchell for the Rabbitohs. Luminous, Jackson Purdue for the Cowboys. Bang, Jack Bostock for the Dolphins. Luminous, Blaze Talagi for Panthers. Bang, Asaya Ayongi for the Eels. Luminous, Ethan Sanders for the Raiders. Red Triumph for the Rabbitohs. Luminous, William Kennedy for the Sharks. League heads, Luke Metcalf for the Warriors. Luminous, Saitili Tupanua for the Bulldogs. Bang, Sebastian Chris for the Raiders. Luminous, Sean Russell for the Eels. Game breakers, Zach Lomax for the Eels. Luminous, Zali Hopkins for the Dragons. Die cuts, Kurt Mann for the Bulldogs. Luminous Kurt Mann for the Bulldogs. League Heads Max King for the Bulldogs. Luminous Jermaine McEwen for the Knights. Die cuts Taylor May for the Tigers. Damien Cook, Luminous for the Dragons. Game Breakers, Blake Brayley for the Sharks. Luminous Adam Dewey for the Tigers. Gladiators, Cameron McInnes for the Sharks, number 440. Luminous Dominic Young for the Knights. League Heads, Connolly Lumi Lowe for the Dolphins. Luminous Hamoli Olika R2 for Manly. Die cuts, Connolly Lumi Lowe for Dolphins. Luminous Lindsay Collins for the Roosters. Bang Dean Mariner for the Broncos. Luminous Cody Walker for the Rabbitohs. League Heads, Kalen Ponga for the Knights. Luminous Brighton Nickera for the Sharks. Game Breakers, Tamika Upton for the Broncos. Luminous Kalen Ponga for the Knights. League Heads, Molly Olika R2 for Manly. Luminous Lycan King Togia for Dragons. Game Breakers, Connor Tracy for the Bulldogs. Luminous Isaac Tago for Panthers. Die cuts, Greg Marsu for the Knights. Luminous Alifiana Campiera for Titans. League Heads, Cohen Hess for the Cowboys. Luminous Addo Carr for the Eels. Mercury, Nelson Safa Solomona for the Storm, number 134. Luminous Robert Toya for the Roosters. Game breakers, Brian To'o for the Panthers. Luminous, Samaima Torfa for the Raiders. League heads, Brian Kelly for the Titans. Luminous, Tamir Martin for the Warriors. Bang, Leka Halasima for the Warriors. Luminous, Jai Gray for the Rabbitohs. League heads, Adam Reynolds for the Broncos. Luminous, Reed Marnie for the Cowboys. Red Triumph, Renato Militalo for the Sharks. Luminous, James Tedesco for the Roosters. Alright, another box down. Bin's definitely getting a bit full now. Gladiators, Mitch Kenny for Panthers, number 50. Luminous, Dream Buller for Tigers. League heads, Wade Egan for the Warriors. Luminous, Xavier Coates for Storm. Game breakers, AJ Brimson for the Titans. Luminous, Herbie Farmworth for the Dolphins. Bang, Isaac Tago for Panthers. Luminous, Dylan Egan for the Dragons. Bang, Joash for Eels. Luminous, Matt Burton for the Bulldogs. Game breakers, Trent LaRoe for Storm. Luminous, Jamie Chapman for Titans. League heads, Payne Huss for the Broncos. Luminous, Jerome Lowe for Tigers. Mercury, Sam Walker for the Roosters. Number 346. Luminous, Hudson Young for the Raiders. League heads, Roger Tuivasa Sheck for the Warriors. Luminous, Leka Halasima for the Warriors. League heads, Falago for Storm. Luminous, Abbey Church for the Eels. Die cuts, Alex Seafarth for Tigers. Luminous, Spencer Lenu for the Roosters. Bang, Tamir Martin for the Warriors. Luminous, Isaiah Yo for Panthers. Game breakers, Kale Iro for the Sharks. Luminous, Dylan Brown for the Knights. Die cuts, Nick Meaney for the Storm. Luminous, Clinton Gutherson for the Dragons. League heads, Morgan Smithies for the Raiders. Luminous, Ben Hunt for the Broncos. Game breakers, Isabel Kelly for the Roosters. Luminous, Asaya Iongi for the Eels. League heads, Mitch Kenny for the Panthers. Luminous, Jack Whiten for the Rabbitohs. Bang, Asaya Katoa for Dolphins. Luminous, Hammer Fido for the Dolphins. Die cut, Kalen Ponga for the Knights. Luminous, Phoenix Crossland for the Knights. League heads, Nico Hines for the Sharks. Luminous, Angus Crichton for the Roosters. Game breakers, Jack Bostock for the Dolphins. Luminous, Jaden Campbell for the Titans. Bang, Renato Mulatalo for the Sharks. Luminous, Taylor Preston for the Bulldogs. League heads, Tommy Dearden for the Cowboys. Luminous, Ethan Bullymore for Manly. And die cuts, White for the Roosters. Luminous, Lachlan Elias for the Dragons. League heads, Samula Fainu for the Tigers. Luminous, Billy Smith for the Roosters. Red Triumph, Brian To'o for Panthers. Luminous, Max King for the Bulldogs. Game breakers, Tegan Dimmick for the Bulldogs. Luminous, Elisha Albert Jones for the Warriors. You know what I just thought of? The Triumph pincher that's missing. Cody Walker's go unaward. Oh no, that's English, my bad. League heads, Ruben Garrick for Manly. Reece Walsh, Luminous Broncos. That's probably why it's not there. Bang, Gerhamat Shabarski for the Broncos. Luminous Tolator Kuwala for Manly. Game breakers, Hudson Young for the Raiders. Luminous Dylan Edwards for Panthers. Red Triumph, Christian Tupaluto. No, that one. That one's hard. Payne Luminous for the Broncos. League heads, Mitchell Moses for the Eels. Luminous Sebastian Chris for the Raiders. Game breakers, Jermaine Hopgood for the Eels. Luminous Jesse Colhoun for the Sharks. Die cuts, Joseph Tarpanay for the Raiders. Luminous Kurt Catewell for the Warriors. League heads, Spencer Lenu for the Roosters. Luminous Campbell Graham for the Rabbitohs. Game breakers, Dominic Young for the Knights. Luminous Ruben Cotter for the Cowboys. Right, clean these up and move on to box number 11. Second last box. Die cuts, Tamale for the Raiders. Luminous Aleka Halasima for the Warriors. Game breakers, Tiana Penatani Gray for the Sharks. Luminous Hammer Tabai Fido for the Dolphins. Red Triumph, Gutho for the Dragons. Luminous Cohen Hess for the Cowboys. League heads, Jeremiah Nanai for the Cowboys. Luminous Nico Hines for the Sharks. Bang, Scott Drinkwater for the Cowboys. Luminous Alehe Hopawate for Manly. Game Breakers, Alehe Hopawate for Manly. Luminous Morgan Smithies for the Raiders. And die cut Hamoli Olika R2 for Manly. Luminous Dean Mariner for the Broncos. Red Triumph Jerome Hughes for Storm. Luminous Isaiah Yo for Panthers. League Heads Jason Saab for Manly. Luminous Dylan Brown for Knights. Game Breakers Tommy Dearden for the Cowboys. Luminous Clinton Gutherson for Dragons. League Heads Cody Nikarima for the Dolphins. Ben Hunt Luminous for Broncos. Bang Falago for Storm. Luminous Asaya Iongi for the Eels. League Heads Alifiana Campiera for Titans. Luminous Jack Whiten for the Rabbitohs. Gladiators Max King for the Bulldogs, number 335. Luminous Matt Burton for the Bulldogs. Game Breakers Bradman Best for the Knights. Luminous Jamie Chapman for the Titans. Bang Clinton Gutherson for the Dragons. Luminous Jerome Luai for Tigers. League Heads Will Penasini for the Eels. Luminous Hudson Young for the Raiders. League Heads Lindsay Smith for Panthers. Luminous Isabel Kelly for the Roosters. Bang Hugo Savala for the Roosters. Luminous Nelson Asafa Solomona for Storm. Game Breakers KO Weeks for the Raiders. Salami kick out, Luminous for the Bulldogs. Die cut, Cameron McInnes for the Sharks. Luminous, Apasai Coruscant for the Tigers. Mercury, Nico Hines for the Sharks, number 404. Val Holmes, Luminous for the Dragons. League heads, Jacob Carraz for the Bulldogs. Luminous, Big Tino for the Titans. Bang, Jaden Campbell for the Titans. Luminous, Kale Ero for the Sharks. Game Breakers, Luke Metcalf for the Warriors. Luminous, Cody Nikarima for the Dolphins. League heads, Jacob Little for the Dragons. Luminous, Jason Saab for Manly. Die cut, Lycan Togia for the Dragons. Ryan Pappenhausen, Luminous for Storm. League heads, Joseph Tarpanay for the Raiders. Luminous, Gehamat Shabarsky for the Broncos. Game Breakers, Cody Walker for the Rabbitohs. Luminous, Jacob Preston for the Bulldogs. Clive Churchill predictor. Luminous, Jeremiah Nanai for the Cowboys. League heads, Jerome Hughes for Storm. Luminous, Keezy Apps for Tigers. League heads, Ronaldo Militalo for the Sharks. Luminous, Liam Martin for the Panthers. Game Breakers, Hugo Savala for the Roosters. Luminous, Scott Drinkwater for the Cowboys. Bang, Phoenix Crossland for the Knights. Luminous, Luca Moretti for the Eels. League heads, Cameron Murray for the Rabbitohs. Luminous, James Fisher-Harris for the Warriors. Last packet for box number 11. One box to go. Game Breakers, Apasai Coruscant for Tigers. Luminous Yasmin Clydesdale for the Knights. Last box. Hopefully we can add something to the table. Hey mate. This one. Right. How's your package travels going? Has it arrived? I haven't asked Dad. League heads Jackson Purdue for the Cowboys. Luminous Tolator Koala for Manly. Die cut Will Penasini for the Eels. Luminous Dylan Edwards for Panthers. Game Breakers Mahalia Murphy for the Eels. Luminous Payne Haas for Broncos. Bang Zach Lomax for the Eels. Luminous Sebastian Chris for the Raiders. League heads James Tedesco for the Roosters. Luminous Phoenix Crossland for the Knights. League heads Cam Munster for Storm. Luminous Dream Buller for the Tigers. Die cuts Jeremiah Nanai for the Cowboys. Luminous Xavier Coates for the Storm. League heads Jacob Saifiti for the Knights. Still, God. Luminous Herbie Farnworth for the Dolphins. Bang Herbie Farnworth for the Dolphins. And Dylan Egan Luminous for the Dragons. Game Breakers Loco Tonga for the Dragons. Luminous Abby Church for the Eels. Red Triumph Blaze Talagi for Panthers. Luminous Spencer Lenu for the Roosters. Die cuts Robert Toya for the Roosters. Luminous Angus Crichton for the Roosters. League heads Gahamat Shabarski for the Broncos. Luminous Jaden Campbell for the Titans. Bang Xavier Savage for Raiders. Luminous Taylor Preston for the Bulldogs. Game breakers Cooley Kefu for the Dolphins. Luminous Ethan Bullymore for Manly. League heads Chance Nico Clockstad for the Warriors. Luminous Jesse Colhoun for the Sharks. Mercury Clinton Gutherson for the Dragons, number 90. Luminous Kurt Catewell for the Warriors. League heads Terrell May for Tigers. Luminous Campbell Graham for the Rabbitohs. Bang Chanel Harris Tavita for the Warriors. Luminous Bradman Best for the Knights. League heads Jake Trebojevic for Manly. Luminous Junior Paulo for the Eels. Game breakers Tyson Frizzell for the Knights. Luminous Felice Kafusi for Dolphins. Red Triumph for the Titans. Luminous Ethan Strange for the Raiders. Die cut Lindsay Smith for the Panthers. Luminous Lachlan Ilias for the Dragons. Game breakers Adam Fanua Blake for Sharks. Luminous KO Weeks for the Raiders. League heads KO Weeks for Raiders. Luminous Bo Fermor for the Titans. Bang Stephen Crichton for the Bulldogs. Luminous Jason Tormalolo for the Cowboys. Game breakers Liam Martin for the Panthers. Luminous Alex Twal for Tigers. League heads, Kurt Mann for the Bulldogs. Luminous, Tyron Wishart for the Storm. League heads, Keanu Kinney for Titans. Luminous, Kira Dib for the Cowboys. Peter for the Rabbitohs in the die cut. Luminous, Braden Trindle for Sharks. Getting towards the end now, 6th last packet for the break. Game breakers, Tanila Paseka for Manly. Luminous, Sam Verrills for Titans. League heads, Brian To'o for Panthers. Luminous, Billy Smith for the Roosters. Game breakers, Alafiana Campiera for Titans. Luminous, Max King for the Bulldogs. Bang Ruben Garrick for Manly. Luminous, Lyshan Albert Jones for the Warriors. Gladiators, Jermaine McEwen for the Knights, number 371. Luminous, Reese Walsh for the Broncos. And lucky last for the break, game breakers, Jerome Hughes for Storm and Ruben Cotter, Luminous for the Cowboys. Alright, back to the beginning. We have our State of Origin number 36 for the Blues, Latrell Mitchell. So going to the Rabbitohs, Talia Mare. Next up, Dally M Predictor, number 99 for the Warriors, Chance Nicole Klokstad. And our instant win for Peter Lowe with Manly. Next up, Premiership Predictor number 176 for the Raiders. Dally M Wildcard number 54 for the Roosters. Alright, Golden Triumph number 6. It's a team 1 for Manly. Really going all right. See if we can get that in close enough. Don't know. All right, next up, Number 51, Dally M Predictor for the Bulldogs, Connor Tracy. It's too blurry because of the focus being set so far out for those numbers. Now, I'm not sure how to fix that other than having autofocus, and then that doesn't always work out either. Clive Churchill Predictor to finish us off. Number 50 for the Eels, Ryan Nuttall with the Eels. Congratulations. All right, we aren't quite finished yet. We still have our bonuses, which is our 2 boxes, our sticker and hobby, as well as our sticker album, which also has the 5 extra packets. So let's change our screen. Where are we? There we are. Bring you up. Everyone is loaded in and ready to go. We'll randomize that 3 times with the lucky winner being in spot 1 on the last go. Number 1, number 2, and lucky last, number 3. Peter Lowe with the Storm. Congratulations, mate. Thank you to everyone for being a part of it, and don't forget to check out the available teams on the website. Before we went live, we had 5 teams left in number, what are we, 458, I believe. This is 457. 458 has 5 teams, and I think it was 9 in 459. So go and check them out, grab a team, and you could be in the next one. Until then, guys, I will catch you all later.